Hi, welcome to this live recording of my podcast, Leadership English. Before we start, I want to give you a little behind the scenes of how I prep for any public speaking. And something that's really important for you to do is to create a routine. So you can use this one or create your own. So I always start with three, two, one. You massage your ears in three spots. Bring up one, two, and one breath. And then I always add shaking this out, shaking out my hands, moving around a little bit, getting that nervous energy out. And I'll do some mouth exercises. Unique New York. You could run. I actually worked with a voiceover artist who taught me that something that she does to loosen up the mouth muscles is runs her tongue around, and that helps with articulation. Okay, so let me go ahead and pull this up. And thank you so much for joining me for this live recording. Make sure if you have any questions or if you just want to introduce yourself, do so in the chat and I can ask. Oh my gosh, I'm getting tongue tied. I can answer your questions after the recording. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. In today's episode of Leadership English, we're going to talk about a really important mindset shift, something that is impacting probably right now negatively, but we're going to change it to something that will impact you positively for your fluency, your confidence, and your executive presence. My name is Tanya Suarez, and as a communication coach, I help executives who are non-native speakers communicate confidently and clearly in English. And if you haven't done so already, make sure you head over to tanyasuarez.com/lead to download this free audio training of the 3 essentials of American leadership communication. Because understanding the cultural expectations and how to modify your communication to target the American audience will help you feel so much more confident. Now, the mindset shift we're talking about today, this is something that as a leader, especially as a leader who's a non-native speaker, it can be really challenging because at least for my clients, they're so confident in their native language and it feels really jarring, really uncomfortable to have such a high level of expertise and to not be able to feel as confident in English. That can lead to, we've talked about this in other episodes, it can lead to resentment. It can lead to just feeling defeated, and that can negatively impact your energy as well as your confidence. So, this is something really important that I see in most of my clients because as leaders, you are probably a high performer. You're someone who's used to being good, you're very ambitious. And so, to not be good at something is frustrating. So, something that I want you to see if this is what you're doing is, do you think when you speak English, and particularly I work on this with public speaking, but it also comes out in conversational English. So what I find that non-native speakers do is they think, if I can start speaking English well, then I'll be confident. I understand why you do it, but it's not effective. Because what ends up happening is you're putting so much pressure in that moment. You're putting so much pressure in constructing your statement or your response. It negatively impacts your active listening because you're not paying attention because you're trying to make sure that the first thing you say is correct and clear and makes sense and is perfect. So you're not in the moment. From a body language perspective, you're probably more tense, your face is more serious. And so that might be, depending on the conversation, that might be giving off the wrong impression. The other thing is, I find that what this usually causes non native speakers to do is you're getting so nervous and worked up, and there's so much pressure on that first sentence or first few comments that you tend to rush. You tend to just rush through the beginning, and a lot of times that might be your introduction. It might be your name. It might be the main point of your presentation. That's horrible because then the audience is not going to perceive you as confident because you can't even say your name clearly, or they're not really going to understand what your presentation is about because you're mumbling and you're rushing through it. So, this is why setting that expectation of, if I speak English well, then I can relax and be confident is not going to work, because what that does is it then delays the confidence. And we want to start with confidence. So, first, I want you to think about if this is something that you're doing. Do you take a deep breath? Do you define your value and your English value in particular, your communication value, by how correct you are, how correctly you start? If so, again, at this level of English, everyone I work with always wants more English, but I promise you, by the time you're holding a leadership position where you speak English all day long, you have enough English and you have enough grammar. What you need to focus on is your confidence, your executive presence, and your communication strategy. American English, especially, is a lot more casual than the English you use for tests. When you're going for that B2, C2 level, that's so overly formal. That's great if you need that level in order to get the job. But once you're in it, we don't speak that way. So I want you to chip away at that pressure and keep in mind that simple is better. So there's less pressure in what you're going to say. And now you can focus on how you're going to say it. Open your mouth more. I find that telling people to speak slowly, that's not really great. It's a really hard thing to remember in the moment. But if you train yourself to open your mouth more, it has the benefit of just because you have more time to open your mouth, it slows down your speech a little bit, but it still sounds natural. And you feel more confident because you're not rushing through it and people can understand you more. Your English is good enough, but when you're mumbling and you're not moving your mouth like this, people aren't going to understand you. You're going to perceive that as, oh my gosh, my English isn't good enough. It must be my pronunciation. And it's not your pronunciation, it's just they can't hear you. So those are moments where you internalize negativity, but it's misplaced or it's misunderstood. So, what I want you to do is, I want you to start training yourself to start with relaxed confidence. And then that's when the English will be better. And it feels kind of odd, especially for people in leadership positions, because you're more comfortable a lot of times being more in control. And it can seem like controlling the English, controlling the words and the structure is more logical, or it's something that you're more used to being in control of, but it's not working. So, what I want you to do is, I want you to be in control of relaxed confidence. And that can feel confusing because some people think of confidence as something that you just are, but it's not. Confidence, especially relaxed confidence, calm confidence, that's something you can train yourself to, even if you don't feel it, at least to look and sound like you are. So, something that I do before anytime I have a big meeting or a call or a coaching session, I do 3, 2, 1. Massage my ears in 3 spots. 2 is going up and down for posture. 1 is breathing. If it's a particularly long session, I'll also shake out my hands. That gets out my nervous energy or my excited energy, because they both present very similarly in a physiological way. And move my mouth. If you can do that, great. This is a lot easier for virtual meetings. If you're in a meeting and like in person and you're about to present, you probably don't want to do that, but you can find subtle ways. So you can just inhale, exhale. If your hand's in your lap, you can tap your fingers. You can inhale for 2, exhale for 2. Some people will put the classic like paper clip in your pocket, and you can something tangible, something tactile that you can feel to just channel that energy out. Find little routines that will activate the confidence. Breathing is one of the best things you can do for your English, because a lot of times your heart rate accelerates whether you're nervous or excited, and that'll impact your breathing, which then impacts the ability to access the English and the words and the creativity that you need to communicate. So start with the breath work. Start with calming yourself down. And then, because you're calm, you'll be able to find the words that you need. You'll be able to naturally pause if you need more time. You'll be able to remember simple is better. And then you'll be able to focus on the communication strategies that, if you're working with me, you're learning about the triangle method. You're learning about being interest based. You're learning about leading with benefit. So all of those strategies are easier to implement when you're calm. And having a routine that you can fall back on, maybe you start off confident and then you get to the point. I find that for the leaders that I work with, a lot of times the anxiety is triggered again when you get to the Q&A segment of a presentation because you start getting nervous of what if I don't understand their question? What if I can't answer their question? What if the way I'm answering it is not clear? So sometimes there'll be multiple points where you feel that anxiety kick in and you want to be able to trigger calm confidence. So maybe before the Q&A, you're also tapping your fingers or breathing a little bit, and this will give you the ability to reset at any point. So this mindset shift is really, really important. I really want you to think about what you're currently doing. So for the first week, for this week, for example, until our next episode, I want you to observe yourself. How is your breath? And I don't mean how it smells, although that's also good to check, but I mean, how are you breathing? Are you holding your breath? Are you holding your breath, especially when you know it's about to be your turn to speak or your turn to present? A lot of times you don't even realize that you stop breathing. So then by the time you get up there or it's your turn to speak, you're already starting from this like super high anxious level. And again, from a cognitive perspective, from an English perspective, you can't get the language that you need. So if you ever feel like, oh, every time I speak, I freeze and I can't think of the words, even though I know them, that's why. You have to learn how to calm yourself physically so that you can intellectually access what you need. And this is really important because for a non native speaker, it's multifaceted. It's not just being calm like you would have in training for native speakers. It's a little bit different because you have multiple layers. It's not just about feeling calm, it's about the frustration of if I could do this in my native language, I would do this so much better. So sometimes you're playing that narrative. You're feeling that competitive nature, especially at the level that you are. You're like, oh, these other people are presenting, they're speaking so much better than me because they're native speakers. You might think, oh, that's not fair, or I'll never be that. So you're having all these other thoughts that a native speaker doesn't have to deal with. And so that's really important to just observe that, accept that, and then figure out a way for that not to be an obstacle for you. And realistically, that might not go away 100%, and that's okay because first you're training the coping mechanisms. You're giving yourself those routines, and then as you're doing that, that'll help you perform better as you're working on the confidence, the inner situations that are impacting your speech. Because I want you to be able to speak clearly and confidently, regardless of how you feel. Because I know that you need that first. You need that first now. And then as you're doing that, then you work on the other things. For example, sleeping better, finding out where your anxiety is triggered. A lot of times when I work with my clients, we need to figure out, okay, are you feeling anxious? I was just working on this last week. Where does the anxiety start? The week before, the day before, the morning of, the moment before. And some people only feel it the moment before. Some people, especially for non native speakers, I find it usually starts the day before. So now that you have these coping mechanisms and you're understanding the importance of breath work and you're understanding how being calm allows you to speak English better, that's your motivation. And what happens is it's a really cool domino effect because once you understand that, then that starts impacting how you prepare. When you put the pressure on yourself that if your English is good, then you can be confident, what happens in the preparation stage is you tend to script more. You tend to use more complicated grammar because you're trying to have correct English. You're doing more on the writing side, and written English doesn't always translate to natural verbal English. So when you're doing this mindset shift and you're accepting that I can feel calm confidence and that's going to help me speak better, when you're preparing, then you can focus more on the strategies that you'll learn with me, which is instead of scripting, you want to instead of scripting, which leads to like the presentation robotic voice, you can focus on sharing. You're going to look at the slides and you're going to imagine speaking to the audience. You're going to really be able to understand what do they need to hear, what word choice will help them, whether it's being persuasive, like help them buy my service or help them feel more motivated if it's like an internal team meeting. That's going to be so much more effective with the word choice. So then when you're about to do the presentation or speak up in a meeting, you're going to be able to feel the first few times when you feel this, it's just you're like, "Oh, I didn't have to think about it. I could just be there. I could just speak up." And it takes a lot of training for that. So I want you to accept that this is a process, but we're going to flip the script. We're going to feel calm confidence and then speak English well. All right. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that these tips were helpful. Let me know in the comments what other topics are interesting for you, other ways that I can help you. And if you're ready to elevate your English communication and executive presence, or if you're looking for training resources for the international leaders in your company, book a call with me today at tanyasuarez.com and find out how I can help you meet your goals. Thank you so much, and I can't wait to see you for the next episode of Leadership English. All right. Thank you so much for joining this live recording. I'll make sure to post this. I think this episode will probably come out at the end of July. And I'll put together some notes. And if you're interested in getting the email with the link whenever it's ready, make sure to sign up. All right, let me check some of the comments. Hi, Leo. Let's see. You feel that English is with it? Yes. Yes. So again, you're that's great. Your mindset is changing. When you start feeling that things are possible, your energy is different, you're more positive, you start noticing your success, your wins more than noticing your fails, and that's positive reinforcement. So that makes me really happy to hear. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. All right, I'll see you next Thursday for another episode of Leadership English, and I look forward to getting to know you even more.